I've got an easy topic for us this morning. The meaning of life. I mean, part of the story that we tell about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is that we're being judged, and if we're being judged, then it's important to know what we are supposed to be doing or not doing and why. Which I think that means, what's the meaning of our life? And are we living up to it? And that's a really hard one to answer because all of our lives are so different. We have students, workers, and retirees. And there are people whose identities aren't all that tied up in being either a student or a worker or a retiree. We have children, parents, and grandparents. And we have people that aren't children anymore. They're not parents and they aren't grandparents. We have people who are religious and not so religious. And certainly there are some folks that identify as religious, and they're really struggling with this whole meaning question. There is a movie out this summer about that, Between the Temples, about a cantor who falls into a real bout of despair following the death of his wife and can't see much meaning to his life. Now, I haven't seen the movie yet, though I'm sure I will at some point. There's only so many new releases out that feature Jewish clergy as a major character. Though Netflix has Nobody Wants This, featuring Adam Brody as a rabbi, which makes sense because Adam Brody is handsome and funny and kind. People compare me to Adam Brody. They say, Rabbi, why can't you be more like Adam Brody? I'm 4 episodes in on Nobody Wants This, so I'll finish it before I comment more. But at 4 episodes, I do have a few things to say. Come back in a few weeks, I'll give my review. The meaning of life. Let's talk first about finding meaning in work. The Torah has a lot to say here, including in the 10 Commandments. It's only 10 if you want it to be 10, by the way. Because while we say that commandment number 4 is the commandment for Shabbat, the phrase actually includes the words, the commandment, the 4th commandment, actually includes the words, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. Rest is important, but you could read that as a commandment, and the Torah's ratio of rest to work is approximately 1-6. Maybe a bit more rest when you start counting other various holidays besides Shabbat. And I don't know for sure, but I have a hunch that God is starting to favor a 4-day work week. Anyways, productivity isn't all there is to life, but it is a big part. But how to be productive? Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the late British chief rabbi of the Orthodox Jews there, said that finding meaning in life happens when what somebody wants to do is matched to what needs to be done. And lots needs to be done. And our wants and talents vary. So that can play out in a lot of different ways. We need teachers, and there are people who are so passionate about teaching. We need judges and police officers and firefighters and lawyers and paralegals and administrators and healthcare professionals of all sorts and creatives, and you get the idea. It goes on and on and on. Some people just seem so suited to those roles, and when there's a good match, meaning is to be found. It's not quite do what you love type of advice. It's more find out what you're good at, what you have a special talent in. Discover what needs to be done, and then try and find a match. But there's a danger in going too far, in over-identifying the meaning of one's life to one's job. Moses, the greatest prophet in Jewish tradition, no one could say that his life had no meaning. He confronted Pharaoh, took our people out of Egypt, and through the wilderness for 40 years to get to the promised land, stopping along the way to go up Mount Sinai and receive the 10 Commandments. God would give Moses a Lifetime Achievement Award for the work that he did. But Moses was not actually very good with his own family. And the Torah points that out several times. God gets upset with Moses for missing his kid's bris. His wife Zipporah, the children's mother, was there. Moses was not. The Torah says God was angry because of that. After Moses leaves Egypt and is continuing on the road, the Torah says that Moses' father-in-law Jethro, who was a Midianite, not an Israelite, caught up to him. Jethro had his daughter Zipporah, that is Moses' wife, and Moses' children with him. Jethro said to Moses, "You forgot a few people." Moses was so preoccupied with his work, his mission, that he had neither time nor apparently the headspace to always remember his own family. Not only that, but Jethro lectured Moses about doing so much work. He told Moses that the burden he was carrying was too much and that he needed help. He needed to trust other people and give them jobs to do. So even at work, Moses was struggling alone. Moses was to lead the Israelites. But how was he to do that if he couldn't figure out a way to raise up other leaders from their midst? Maybe that's a way of the Torah saying that even Moses could not have it all. Let's look at relationships. There is so much meaning to be found in relationships. So much so that when God created Adam, God declared it's not good for Adam to be alone. And so God made Eve. Aristotle taught, without a friend, no one would want to live, even if they owned everything there is to own. And many of the most moving stories in not just the Torah, but the entire Hebrew Bible are stories of love and friendship. Jacob had fallen deeply in love with Rachel. Laban, her father, told Jacob that if he worked for him for 7 years, then he would allow for them to marry. So the Torah says, so Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. And there was no love stronger than the love between King David and Jonathan. When they first meet, David was not yet king, and Jonathan was a prince, the son of King Saul. David was a shepherd boy who had just defeated Goliath. Afterwards, David addressed King Saul, and Jonathan was there. The book of Samuel says, when David had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was bound to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. There are many episodes of the two of them together, but sometime later, Jonathan dies. And when King David finds out, he laments, "I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Greatly beloved were you to me. Your love to me was wonderful, surpassing the love of any other woman." Now, there's no such thing as too much love. But like work, there are forms of excess. Sometimes people tie up their identity so much with another person that they lose their own sense of self. I sometimes counsel couples that are about to be married. And one of the things that we explore is how connected they feel to one another. And it's possible for one or both to experience that connection as overly connected, meaning they feel that their own freedom and identity is restricted. So tied up is it in somebody else. When somebody feels that they owe every single free moment they have to somebody else, not able to explore their own interests or passions or work. There's something more to consider. Beyond just finding meaning in work or relationships. And that's this. It's not just what we do with our lives, our careers, the relationships we build. It's not just what we do, but how we do it. The medieval Spanish rabbi, Moses ben Nachman, Rabban, said that this is the meaning of the verse, "You shall be holy." It's important not just to be successful, but to be good. And that can manifest itself in seemingly small ways. Treating a restaurant server as a human being, tipping appropriately, giving generously to tzedakah, even if no one else knows, being the sort of person that's pleasant to be around. As Shammai the elder said, greet each person with a smile, being a person of integrity. And finally, a place to find meaning, seeing yourself as part of something greater than yourself. For me, that's being Jewish and trying to be a good Jew, being an American, being a member of the community that comes with both benefits and also responsibilities. And finally, for me, believing and trusting in God, even as I barely understand what that means. Last week on Rosh Hashanah and a few times before, I mentioned how I had brain surgery when I was 27. Probably saved my life. What I didn't say last week, though, was what I was thinking at the time. And I was thinking a lot. But one day I was outside and I saw the mountains surrounding Tucson. And I thought, I could be gone and those mountains will remain. Those mountains had seen generations come and go, and we'll see much more. But even those mountains hadn't been there forever, and eventually they'll be gone too. At the time when I was 27, I wasn't a parent. And if I had died then, I would have regretted that. But even children and children's children and children's children's children will come to an end. And I took some comfort in God's eternity. And not just God's eternity, but God's goodness. That there was something more to life than it being short and a random blink of an eye. And so on Yom Kippur, we are called for an accounting. Who have we been? Who are we now? Who do we aspire to be? What have we accomplished? What have we contributed to the world? Have we found people to share our lives with? Friends or partners or spouses? Have we made the world, or at least our small corner of it, a bit better? Do we see ourselves as part of the whole, or do we separate ourselves out? Can we find or appreciate a role for ourselves in the grand scheme of things? There are not always easy answers to these questions. And for all of us, we are all works in progress. None of us is quite there yet, or else there would be no need for today. But at the same time, perhaps we can be proud of where we are and where we have come from. May the year ahead be one of meaning and purpose. May we succeed in our tasks, find love in relationships, and be a blessing to others. Amen. Gemar Hatima Tova.